Some of the statements he makes in An Inconvenient Truth are just plain wrong. Here's one. He says that when he went to Kenya, he heard that that in Nairobi, they were getting malaria now for the first time. And this, he says, is because Nairobi is built high on an elevation, and it used to be too cold. It used to be above the mosquito line. But now, because of global warming, the mosquitoes are living up at the top of the hill, and people are coming down with malaria in Nairobi. Well, again, 2 clicks of the mouse would bring you to the World Health Organization site, which has a very detailed study of malaria in Nairobi, Kenya. And that graph there shows you that back in 1926, there was an outbreak of malaria in Kenya in which 8,000 people sought treatment at 2 outpatient medical facilities. And again in 1937, there was another outbreak in which about 8,000 people sought treatment in these outpatient facilities. Now, this is a very poor country back then, and so you have to assume that many more people actually contracted the disease than ever got treatment for it. But it's just ridiculous to argue that that malaria was unknown to Nairobi until the age of global warming. This is just plain false. Look at the United States, for example. The United States, much of the United States, even Minnesota cold, back in the 19th century, was a malarious area. You know, and the 19th century was colder than the 20th century. So, folks, the thing to keep in mind here is that malaria is primarily a disease of poverty and technological backwardness. It's not a disease of climate, and this proves it also. Here's the Soviet Union, Archangel. It's hard to find a colder spot than that. 30,000 cases in Archangel in 1923 to 1925. Okay. Another thing Al Gore tells us is that the rate of global warming has been increasing. That's not true. There was a warming period, let's say between 1910 roughly and 1940. Then there was a cooling between, say, 1950 and 1975. And then around 1976, the world started to warm up again. So the warming period that we're in now has been going on for about 3 decades, and the rate of warming has been remarkably constant, 0.17 degrees Celsius per decade over the last 30 years. So the claim that global warming is accelerating, which leads to the fear that, oh my God, everything is spiraling out of control, just ain't so. Al Gore also tells us that in 2004, the United States broke the all-time record for the number of tornadoes, and of course he blames that on global warming. By the way, this is an error that he makes throughout his presentation, where he confuses correlation with causation. I mean, even if it were true that the number of tornadoes in the United States was greater than it's ever been, and it's also true that the world is warming, it doesn't necessarily mean that one caused the other. I mean, you've got to do some more investigation before you can turn a correlation into a cause and effect relationship. But nonetheless, the real fact is that if we look at just the tornadoes that are dangerous, the big ones that have been observable since the 1950s, the category F3 and above, there has actually been a slight downward trend. So the number of tornadoes isn't increasing, rather our capability of detecting the small tornadoes has increased.